All right, Rabosai, good morning. Let us begin. Baruch, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Beautiful daf ahead of us today. I want to begin by thanking all of our sponsors, our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Tishrei. Dr. Linda Weinberg, Sarah and Ricky Gratz, Julia, Rena, and Eve, in loving memory of husband, father, Zayda, Dr. Paul Weinberg, Peretz, Moshe Ben Avraham. To thank Ayal and Sara Steinberg for dedicating the shulami this month from zechus of refuah shelema for shulamis bas susha, and Yudit Ben Zev for dedicating the shulami this month and the zechus of all of our tefillos being miskabel. So we'll say with that, let us begin. We also must take note. Today is the yahrzeit of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, zechus Yagin Aleinu, the Rebbe who is known for so many things, but chiefly amongst them, his incredible and overwhelming Avas Yisrael, love of every single Jew, no matter who and what they were. We should be Zocheh Mir Hashem to internalize this beautiful lesson of the Rebbe. If we have some time at the end, which is highly unlikely, but if we have some time at the end, in Mir Hashem, maybe we'll share a little bit of Torah of the Rebbe. Also, with that, let us begin. So today's daf is Kuf Vav 106, and we are picking up on Kuf Hey Amud Beis 105b. We left off a Meimar. Great. So we'll say in the wide lines, 2, 4, 6, 8 lines in the wide lines. So remember again, the topic over here the Gemara was discussing was the power of shochad, the negative power of shochad. How again, should this be more specific, the Gemara is focusing on over here how the concept of bribery does not just apply to monetary gifts, but could also apply to other non-monetary items as well. So Ameimar, Haviyosef v'kadoin dina. Ameimar was going ahead and judging a particular case. So what happened? Parach gat fa'areshe, a feather fell on his head. Aso gavra shakle, right? Ultimately, a man came over and removed the feather from... Better? Okay. I could also move it closer. I realize it's a little bit close. Okay. So the Gemara says, so a man went ahead and removed the feather. So Amr says, no, what are you doing? What are you doing? So Amarle Dina Islay. So the man said, oh, I happen to have a din Torah in your Beis Din. So Amarle Pasilna L'chaladina. Amr said, I can no longer adjudicate the case for you. So the Rebbe says, so once again, Amr felt that small favor, right? That small Torah, that small act of kindness biased a Meimar in this particular litigant's favor and would compromise the effectiveness of the din. So we'll say, so once again, we're going to see a number of these types of examples, and the Musar Haskell, the lesson is always the same, which is how easily susceptible we are to outside influences. We like to think that we're strong, we like to think that we can resist, but at the end of the day, we are so incredibly susceptible that even the smallest tova, even the smallest favor, has the ability to bias us. And again, here the example is in terms of favors, but Lamaisa, it applies to so many different things that we're susceptible to outside influences. Mar ukva, havashade roka kamein. Mar ukva, there was saliva, spit on the ground in front of him. Asu gavra kasye, a man came along and covered it up for him. So once again, Mar ukva said, no, so what are you doing? Right? What are you doing? Amarle Dina Islay. So the man says, listen, I have a din Torah in your Beis Din. Amarle Pasilna Lecha Ledina. It wasn't letting me sign into Zoom. It sent Jeremy an email or something. I don't know, so I could just stop trying. I'm at a point in my life where if something doesn't work technologically, I just stop trying. Hey, so the Gemara says as follows. So therefore, Amarle Pasilna Lecha Dina. Ultimately, again, I am not allowed to go ahead and adjudicate this case for you. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Avaragil, Arise, to have a maisi le kamali shavsa kansa de peri. So it was an interesting case. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi had a sharecropper. Rabbi said the way this used to work with the sharecropper is that the sharecropper used to bring him a basket of fruit every Erev Shabbos. That's what he brought him every Erev Shabbos. Rabbi said that wasn't a gift. That was payment. That was payment. That was the lease arrangement. So what happened? So the Gemara says, good. One day the sharecropper brought it to him on a Thursday. So Amarle Maishna Ha'idna. So Rabbi Yossi says to Rabbi Shmuel Yossi says to the sharecropper, what's going on? Why are you bringing the basket of fruit now? Amarle Dina Isli Va'amina Agav Orchi Aisile Lamar. Said, I have a din Torah today. So I'm with you. So I figured on my way to the Beis Din, I would drop off the basket of fruit. All right. So lo kabel minei. So first of all, Bisham Yossi wouldn't accept the basket of fruit from him, and furthermore, he said, "Amalei pasun lechaladina." I'm not allowed to adjudicate your case because now I am effectively biased in this situation. So listen to this. So Osiv Zuzei Drabanam. So therefore, Bisham Yossi went ahead and established another set. He went ahead and he appointed another set of rabbanim to adjudicate the case. The kadainon lay. Suppose listen to this. Bahadi de ka'azal va'asi amar I ba'in tain hachi v'i ba'i tain hachi. Suppose this is incredible. So what happens? So remember, Rabbi Shmuel Yossi refuses the gift. That's number one. Number two, he appoints a different group of rabbanim to go ahead and adjudicate the case. As he's listening to the dayanim adjudicate the case, what is he saying to himself? He's saying, this litigant, when he says this litigant, he's referring to a sharecropper. This guy could kinda like this, and this guy could kinda like this. And if he made this claim, it would be so compelling. So in his mind, what's happening? He's advocating for the sharecropper. He's advocating for the sharecropper. So Rabbi Shmuel Yossi says like this. He says, Amar tepach nafsham shal miskabel shochad. Literally, again, the souls, right? The hearts of those who accept bribes should decay, which is a klala. In other words, a punishment should come upon those who accept bribes. Uma'ani shalom natalti. Rabbi Shmuel Yossi says, you know what? I didn't even accept the bribe. And ve'im natalti. Had I accepted the basket of fruit, shalina talti, I would have, that was mine, by the way, right? The basket of fruit wasn't a bribe. Let's remember again, what did the basket of fruit represent? What was it? It was the wage, right? It was the lease payment. So I would have accepted that which rightfully belonged to me. Certainly, so again, and yet I would have influenced. He says, listen, I didn't accept it. And had I accepted the basket of fruit, again, it wouldn't have been a bribe. That was rightfully due to me. And yet, look how much it influenced me. Alachas kama v'kama, a judge who does accept an actual bribe, how difficult and virtually impossible it is for him to adjudicate correctly. Incredible. Rabbi Elisha, I see the Ahu Gavra, Reishes Hagaz. So also Rabbi Bar Elisha was a Kohen. He was a Kohen. A particular man brought him shearings. First shearings of a sheep. I will say that belongs to the Kohen. Reishes Hagaz goes to the Kohen. Amarle, Mehecha'at, so Rabbi Bar Elisha doesn't recognize the guy. He says, who are you? Where are you from? Amarle, Miduch Plan. I'm from so-and-so place. So the Gemara says, Umehasam lahachal have a Kohen lemisvele. So Rabbi Elisha, Duch Plan was far away. So Rabbi Yossi says to him, tell me, there's no coin between here and there that you could have brought this to you slept the shearings all the way to me. So the guy says, now that you ask, Amarle Dina Isli, the truth is I have a din Torah in your Beis Din. Va'amina agav orchai aisile lamar. And I figured the truth is on my way to the Beis Din, I would bring you the first shearings. Amarle pasina lechaladina. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Elisha said, I can no longer adjudicate this case for you. I am pasul. I'm not allowed to go ahead and adjudicate. I'm biased. So lo kabel minei. Furthermore, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Elisha did not accept the shearings. Osiv lezuga d'Rabbanon. Instead, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Elisha goes ahead and sets up, right? He appoints two other Rabbanim to go and adjudicate the case. Vikadaini le. And they're adjudicating it. So Rabbi Shmuel Bar Elisha is there. He's listening to the case. So Bahadi de Ka'azal Va'asel Amar Ibayin Tain Haki, and he finds himself in his mind coming up with the arguments on behalf of this guy, advocating for this guy. So same thing. Amar Tepach Nafshan Shal Miskabel Shochad. So Rabbi Shmuel Bar Elisha says, you see from here how terribly powerful a bribe is, and how a bribe ultimately goes ahead and slants. It fundamentally blinds the eyes of the judge. Umani shalom natalti. Rabbi Shmuel bar Elisha says, I didn't accept the bribe. I didn't accept the bribe. Umani shalom natalti, then natalti shalim natalti. And had I accepted it, right, it was mine. I'm a Kohen. I'm entitled to this. And yet you see how much it impaired my ability to be impartial. All the more so, those who accept chas v'shalom actual bribery, how difficult and virtually impossible it is for them to adjudicate cases properly. So both say, let's go right there. So Rav Anan, I see leahu gavra kansa di gildoni, di beyili. Rav Anan once had a guy who brought him a basket of small fish. So Amalei, Maya Vedetech. So Rav Anan once again says to the guy, tell me, what brings you here? They should bring me this basket of fish. Amalei Dina Isli. So the man said to Rav Anan, I have a din Torah in your beis din. Lo kabamine. Rav Anan did not accept the fish. Right? Va'amalei pason lechaladina. And furthermore, he said to the man, I am unable to adjudicate your case. I'm biased, I can't adjudicate. Amalei Dina demar lo ba'ina. So the man says back to Rav Anan, that's fine, you don't have to adjudicate my case, but kabuli likbal mar, delo lema'anan mar me'akruve bikurim. Both says beautiful. The man says to Rav Anan, that's fine, don't adjudicate my case, but can you please accept my gift? Please accept my gift. Because if you don't accept my gift, it will prevent me from offering bikurim, first fruit. This sign about saying now, why is a gift to Rav Anan called bikurim? The sanya, the ish ba mi bal shalisha, the yaver the isha lakim la says bikurim esre b'lecha mesaorim the Carmel, but siklono. So we'll say, so the Navi describes over here a gift brought to Elisha, and it calls the gift of the 20 loaves of bread bikurim. V'chi Elisha ochel bikurim hava, Elisha wasn't a Kohen, the Navi Elisha wasn't a Kohen, so therefore the gift to him wasn't called bikurim. So what wasn't because why would it call it bikurim? Because it's so beautiful. It's to teach us that whoever brings a gift to a Talmud Chacham, it's as if he's bringing bikurim. Let's say just a beautiful idea that giving a gift to a Talmud Chacham, being mefarnei, sustaining a Talmud Chacham, is the equivalent of going ahead and bringing bikurim to the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, this man says to Rav Anan, so I was like, by the way, what's the connection between a gift to a Talmud Chacham and bikurim? So just on a basic level, what's the whole hashkafa of bikurim? Why does the farmer have to bring first fruit? Because bringing first fruit ultimately highlights the idea that what you have doesn't belong to you. It belongs to Hashem. The gift to a Talmud Chacham says that just like, okay, so what I have doesn't belong to me, that's fine. So then what am I supposed to do with it? And the idea of it is I'm supposed to use it to help others. Specifically, I'm supposed to use what I have in the support of Torah. I'm supposed to use my material wealth to enable the proliferation of spirituality. And the Talmud Chacham is one who ultimately, again, is there to proliferate spirituality amongst the masses. That's his job. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, giving a gift to a Talmud Chacham is ki'ilu one is bringing bikurim. A very beautiful idea. So therefore, the guy says to Rav Anan, that's fine, don't adjudicate my case. But please accept my gift. So Amalei, Kabuli lo ba'inan da'akbel, hashta da'amrit le'taima mikablina. Rav Anan said, the truth is, I wasn't going to accept your gift, but now that you told me your reasoning, that giving a gift to a Talmud Chacham is like offering up bikurim, then I'll accept it. Okay, but obviously Rav Anan was not going to adjudicate the case. Shadri the Kamid Rav Nachman, so he sent this guy to Rav Nachman to have his case adjudicated. So Shalach le nedaine mar lahai gavra da'ana anan pasilna le'ledina. So, and he sent it with the message, Sir Rav Nachman, can you do me a favor, adjudicate this case, because I, Rav Anan, are disqualified from adjudicating the case. And I will say, now this is very interesting. Shmamina, so the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman said, B'deshalach lehachi shmamina krivehu. So krivehu. The boss says, interesting. So Rav Anan says to Rav Nachman, do me a favor, adjudicate this case, because I am possible to adjudicate this case. Now, he doesn't tell Rav Nachman why he's possible. So it's interesting. What does Rav Nachman assume? Rav Nachman assumes that the reason Rav Anan is possible is because Rav Anan is related to the guy. Because the truth is, if you think about it, like a relative is not allowed to adjudicate the case of a relative. So that's like the most common. So that's what he figured. Rav Anan didn't say why. So Rav Nachman assumed, this guy must be the relative of Rav Anan. Now watch what happens. So in the docket of Rav Nachman's court, he had the following. There was a case involving orphans. And I will say, Bepashtos, in a state case, there's something involving orphans in the docket. So now the question Rav Nachman had to deal with was what? Which case should I deal with first? The Yisomim case or this guy who Rav Anan sent to me? Amar, top of Kovav, Amar hayase v'hayase. They both say there's always a mitzvah da'oraisa upon the judge to adjudicate a case correctly. Rashi says, Ushvatatem tzedek. You shall judge righteously. So there is always a din da'oraisa upon a judge to adjudicate the case correctly. Hayase v'hayase. Asay de kavod Torah. Adif. So we'll say obviously the asay of kavod Torah, but in Rav Anan's case, so going ahead and adjudicating the case of his relative is giving honor to a Talmud Chacham, and therefore again Rav Nachman said we should probably adjudicate that case first. So the Gemara says what happened? Salki ledina diasme va'achsi ledine. So they set aside the Yisomim case and they bumped up the case of this guy. So Rabbi says, so what happened? Kevan dechaza baldine yikra deka'avile istatim ta'anase. Rabbi said, this is incredible. So what happened? So now we'll call the fish guy, right? The fish guy and his fellow litigant walk into Beis Din, and now they see that they've been bumped up to the front of the docket. So Rabbi say, what happened? The fish guy's litigant who felt that now, obviously, the fish guy is receiving preferential treatment by the court of Rav Nachman, and therefore he felt unable to properly advance his case. So I'll say, isn't this incredible? So what ended up happening over here is a dramatic misunderstanding, right? So remember again, Rav Anan sends the case to Rav Nachman because he accepted a gift from the fish guy, right? He doesn't he tells Rav Nachman, you adjudicate this case, I can't. Rav Nachman assumes, there we have the mistake. Rav Nachman assumes that halacha l'maaseh, the reason why Rav Anan can't adjudicate is because the guy is his relative. Because the guy is his relative, Rav Anan bumps their case up to the top of the docket. The other litigant, feels that now the fish guy is receiving preferential treatment, and as a result, he felt, what's the word? Not overwhelmed, but intimidated. Thank you. He felt intimidated, and therefore was unable to properly advance his particular claims. And Bepashtos, he lost. So I will say, now listen to this. The Gemara now we're going to see that Rav Anan was held responsible for not properly explaining what this. Not Rav Nachman was held responsible, right? Rav Nachman just operated based on what he thought. Rav Anan was held responsible because halacha l'maaseh did not properly frame to Rav Nachman what was going on over here. So watch this. Rav Anan havaragil Elio de asi gabe. We'll say Rav Anan. This is incredible. Used to learn with Eliyahu Hanavi. Can you imagine such a chavrusa shaft? He used to learn with Eliyahu Hanavi. Incredible. To have a masnile seder Eliyahu. The both say there is what's called in TORAH Sheba'al Peh, a concept called Seder Eliyahu. We'll explain that more in just a bit, but it's a compilation of teachings that Eliyahu Hanavi gave over to Rav Anan. Kevan David Hachi, but once Rav Anan did this, now we'll say did this was he went ahead and inadvertently undermined this case. Remember, how did he undermine the case? By not fully, see, we'll say, sometimes in life, right, we make mistakes by what we say, and sometimes in life we make mistakes by what we don't say, right? In other words, here, Rav Anan passed, he went ahead and he sent the case over to Rav Nachman, and he did not fully explain what it was that was going on over here. As a result, Rav Nachman just assumed that Rav Nachman also made a mistake. That's true, but the burden was but the responsibility was upon Rav Anan to fully articulate what was unfolding over here. So as a result, so remember again, so therefore, Rav Anan used to with Eliyahu Hanavi. So what happened? Kevan David Hachi, once this episode occurred, and now there was a miscarriage of justice, and the miscarriage of justice was really the responsibility of Rav Anan Istalik. Eliyahu Hanavi stopped coming. Ayal and Sara stopped coming to visit him to learn with him. So Yasa Betani, so by Rachamim, so Rav Anan fasted. He davened for Ayal and to come back. Va'asa, and Eliyahu came back. Kiyasa, when he did come back, have a mavis lebi usay. So I will say it's interesting. When he did come back, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. And Rav Anan was scared to be in the direct presence of Eliyahu Navi. So what did he do? Va'avet tivusa Yosef kameh. But say literally means he made himself a box and he sat inside of the box. The idea is he made a mechitza, right? He made a partition so that he was not directly in the presence of Eliyahu Hanavi, but rather again he was there able to learn with him, but wasn't directly in his presence. The Yosef kameh adda apik le sidre. V'hainu da amri seder Eliyahu rabba seder Eliyahu zuta. That was actually incredible. So in the teachings that Eliyahu Hanavi gave to Rav Anan, there are actually two sections. There's what's called Seder Eliyahu Rabbah. That's the section of halachos that Rav Anan learned from Eliyahu Hanavi prior to the judicial incident. And then there's Seder Eliyahu Zuta, which literally, again, the order of Eliyahu, the smaller order of Eliyahu. That's when Rav Anan learned with Eliyahu Hanavi after this incident. I will say it's such an incredible lesson that understand what's happening over here. Rav Anan is indirectly responsible for the fact that another Jew was harmed. Right? That's what's unfolding over here. So remember again, when does Eliyahu Navi come to you? Eliyahu Navi comes to you if you're exceptionally makbid and you're ben adam lechavero. If you're very makbid, if you're very careful with how you treat other Jews. But the moment that another Jew suffers because of something you did, even though it was totally inadvertent, Eliyahu Navi says, I don't need to spend my time coming to the Shabbos. Again, like I said before, very apropos for the fact that it's the yahrzeit of Rav Levi Yitzchak Berdichev. Because again, the Rebbe was so makbid again on how you treat another Jew, how you love another Jew, how you take care of the feelings of another Jew. So here, Rav Anan has this chavrus with Eliyahu Navi, but you did something that inadvertently impacted another Jew, you're held responsible for that. So Eliyahu Navi does, you're not going to have the chavrusa of the Eliyahu Navi for that. You're going to die, you're going to do tshuva. It's also, once you become a person who negatively impacts other people, that leaves a residual impact on who and what you are. So even though Rav Anan davens and Eliyahu Navi comes back, he doesn't come back in the same way. It's not the same afterwards. I will say how careful we have to be in our interpersonal behavior, not just for how we advertently or intentionally impact other Jews, but even how we inadvertently impact other Jews. The Gemara goes weiter. In the years of Rav Yosef, there was divine anger. They will say divine anger ultimately again means there was a famine. Amar li Rabbanan Rav Yosef, li bai mar rachami. The Rabbi said to Rav Yosef, daven for us. Amar lahu hashta umma Elisha Techi havu Rabbanan miftri mikame havu paishi tre alfi umasan Rabbanan bi'idan riskala havar by rachami. So let's listen to this. So Rav Yosef says to him, listen, Elisha was much greater, right? Elisha Navi, when people would leave, right, when the Talmudim would leave the Beis Medrash, there were still 2,200 people left behind. So vast were the Talmudim and those dependent on Elisha that even when they would get up from the Beis Medrash, there were 2,200 people left behind. And yet, Be'idan Rischa Lahavi Bai Rachami. When it was a time of divine wrath, a time of famine, Elisha wouldn't daven. As I will say, the idea being that sometimes when the midas hadin is so acute, when the attribute of divine justice is so intense, it may not be the right time to supplicate. It may not be the right time to ask for compassion. Sa'ana ibay rachami, I should ask for compassion. Tushkumar said, but how do you know that when Elisha, when his Talmidim left the Beis Medrash, there were still 2,200 dependents for Elisha left in the Beis Medrash to Chsev, Vayom Misharsa. So it's a very interesting case. So this is in the middle of famine, right? And I was talking about over here, in Malachim Beis, where there was famine in Eretz Yisrael. So Vayom Misharsa. So the attendant of Elisha said to Elisha, Ma etein zeh. How should I give this? Now, the Gemara is actually linking back to the pasuk that the Gemara quoted at the end of Kuf Hamed Beis, where the Gemara discusses that Elisha was given 20 loaves of barley bread to sustain all of his disciples, 20 loaves. So the Gemara says that Elisha's attendant says to him, what am I going to do with these 20 loaves? Lifnei mea ish. My lifnei mea ish. What does it mean 20 loaves in front of 100 people? If you say it means literally 20 loaves in front of 100 people, 20 loaves in front of 100 people, that's great, right? 20 loaves for 100 people in a time of famine, that's fantastic. No, rather what it must mean, it was 20 loaves for right? 20 loaves, each loaf in front of 100 people. So we'll say, giving us ultimately, again, telling us the number of people who ultimately had to be sustained by Elisha. When the Talmidim would leave the yeshiva of Rav, the Beis Medrash of Rav, there were still 1,200 Talmidei Chachamim left. And I was supposed to say, even when Shir was over and people leave the Beis Medrash, there were still 1,200 people left behind. So vast for the Talmidim of Rav. When the students of Rav Huna would leave the Beis Medrash, there were 800 Rabbanim who were still left in the Beis Medrash. Listen to this Gemara. This is incredible. So Rav Huna darish b'tleisar amorai. Rav Huna had so many Talmidim, right? Had so many Talmidim that when he would give a shir, he had 3 amorim, three spokespeople, right? 3 meturgamans, right? Who would go ahead and explain the shir to everyone. After the shir, when the Rabbanim would get up and leave the Beis Medrash, right? Naftsi glimayhu. So we'll say, remember, Talmidim were often sitting on the ground. So when Rav Huna finished giving shir and they got up, what would everybody do when they got up? They would dust off their cloak. Listen to this. Havusalik afka, the dust would rise, vikasi le liyoma. And literally, it would cover the sun. And as well say, like Kivyachol, there'd be a dust storm. So many Talmidim did Rav Huna have that when they would get up from the shir and just shake out their jacket, shake out their cloak, literally again the sun would be obscured. And I will say, this was in Bavel. And ultimately again they would see this in Eretz Yisrael and they would say, Kamulei misifted Rav Huna bavla. Rav Huna the Babylonian just finished giving shir. I will say, there's a lot of beautiful metaphorical meaning in this as well. We're not going to get into this now, but I'll just point out, I will say, just imagine the beauty of it. So I will say, it's interesting because today, in today's day and age, when we think about like massive numbers of followers, so we think about like, this person has like a big online following, right? Which is fantastic. I will say, but just understand the imagery at the Gemara's highlighting of is online following is fantastic. But I will say, just again, imagine being amongst throngs of people. I will say, I remember when I was in Eretz Yisrael a couple of times ago, my boys were learning in the Mir, and they were in Rav Asher's shir. And Rav Asher's shir in the Mir, there are now about 900 Talmidim. So I went with shir to them. It's in a basement in one of the buildings of the Mir Yeshiva. And again, if you could imagine just a massive room, literally filled wall to wall with Talmidim, going into the stairwell. It's I didn't understand the word of the shir, but I'm saying like it's incredible just to see what it looks like to have throngs of Talmidei Chachamim or aspiring Talmidei Chachamim listening to Torah. I have to say, like, it's something overwhelming. I'm just saying, so different, because today we're like, 5,000 people watch this, 3 million people turn this. That's fine, but everyone's in their living room. That's fantastic. There's a beauty that I think we miss. I don't know that we necessarily have it today in the same or appreciation for it, of just a lot of people in one space, all soaking in Kedusha. So here, this imagery, I will say, there's a lot of examples. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Gemara says, during the Regalim, he used to go ahead and give shir in the shade of the walls of the Beis Hamikdash, because there was no Beis Medrash that was capable of going ahead and containing all of them in one space. Rav Huna, they're getting up, they dust off their cloaks, and literally, figuratively, you can't see the sun. You can't see the sun. Hallelujah, we should be zocheh to see such a thing. Ki miftri rabbanon mebi Rabba Rav Yosef, havu paisha arba me rabbanon. Shabbos said, when the students would leave the yeshiva of Rabban Rav Yosef, there would be 400 Rabbanon left in the Beis Medrash. They called themselves orphans. They felt orphans from the rest of the group. When the Rabbanon leave the house with the yeshiva of Abaye, Rav Papa, Rav Ashi, Havu Paishi, Masan Rabbanon, they call it Nafshaihu Yasmi Di Yasmi. I will say the idea over here is that Gemara is trying to highlight how many beautiful Talmidim each of these Rabbanim had. That even when Shir was over and people left the Beis Medrash, there was still a significant contingent ultimately left. I will say, I'll just tell you something amazing also. It's fascinating to hear that when Shir was over, there'd be some left in the Beis Medrash, and those left in the Beis Medrash called themselves Yisomim, orphans. See, Rabbi say, when you're not part of the Chevra, when you're not part of the Chabura, when you're not part of the collective, you're a Yasam. You're an orphan. What it means to be a Yid is not to live on the periphery. What it means to be a Yid is not just, okay, I have a small Chevra. This is what it means to be a Jew is that you're part of something so much bigger than yourself. And if you're not part of something so much bigger, if you live on the periphery, you live on the margins, you just go ahead and you're part of something much so much, you don't avail yourself of being part of a tzibur, being part of it, then you're orphaned. You're orphaned because you're missing out on something so incredibly beautiful. See, even though you had hundreds of people left in the Beis Medrash, there's hundreds left, but when the primary group left, we're orphaned. We're orphaned from being part of the Chabura. So incredible. So Gemara goes weiter. I'm Rabbi Yabi. We'll say switching gears a little bit over here. I'm Rabbi Yabi. I will say those individuals has an interesting job. Their job was to check animals, carbonic animals, for mumin. It was a job, and obviously in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, a full-time job. Who paid the salary? So obviously the Beis HaMikdash paid the salary. Where did the salary come from? Trumas halishka. What the Trumas halishka is? Machzis hashekel. It came from the half shekel collections. Okay, Rav Yudam Shmuel. Tamid chacham lamdin hilchos shchita lekohanim hayunot lin scharan mitrumas halishka. Similarly again, Tamid chachamim who taught the laws of shchita to the kohanim. They were also employed by the Beis HaMikdash. Where did their salary come from? Their salary came from also the half shekel. Rav Gidon Rav Tamid chachamim hamlamdin hilchos kmitza. So Talmidei Chachamim who went ahead and taught the laws of Kmitza, right? Rabbi say again, Karban Mincha, Kohen only goes in and scoops up with his 3 middle fingers, has to shave off the sides, right? So that was a skill. So the Talmidei Chachamim who taught the Kohanim the skills, Notlin Scharan Mitrumas Halishka. Ultimately, again, they would go ahead and get paid from the Machzor. Also, I was thinking about this Gemara last night. Gave me a lot of chizuk. Because I will say, Bepashtos, these people don't have to be Kohanim, right? The Talmidei Chachamim who go ahead and teach Shchita or teach Kmitza don't have to be Kohanim. So I was thinking about this for those of us who suffer from profound and ongoing Kohanic envy, right? I am chief amongst them, right? If I had one thing I would love to, more than anything, to be a Kohen, I realize this is our in. This is our in. Now, being that I'm not really a shchita guy, I think I'm going to carve out a kmitza niche. I think this is going to be my... Also, it's not so complicated, right? I feel like, and we'll say this is your ticket to the Beis HaMikdash. Become proficient in either kmitza or shchita, and then you could be the Talmud Chacham. You could become the person who goes out and teaches Kohanim. Now, once you're the Rebbe of Kohanim, Bepashtos, that's like a backstage pass, right? I'm saying, right, you've got VIP, right? Okay, you still can't go in, you're not allowed to go in, but at least you have a seat at the table, right? At least, again, you're there. So something really to think about. So the Gemara goes right there. The Gemara says, Amar Rabba Rahun, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Magi Esran Yerushalayim, Hayunot Lin Scharim Mitrumas Halishka. Interesting enough, we'll say, those Sofrin, who were responsible ultimately again for fixing Sifrei Torah, would also take their salary from the Machzis HaShekel. Amrav Nachman, Amrav, Nashim Argos Beparachos, Notless Schar Mitrumas Halishka. Women who weave curtains, Bepashtas curtains for the Beis HaMikdash, they also go ahead and take their salary from the Machzis HaShekel. Vani Omer Mekache Be the Kabayis. However, Rav Nachman says, I disagree. I think they actually take it from Bedek Kabayis. Remember again, in the Beis HaMikdash, there are different accounts. There's Trumas Halishka, which is Machzis HaShekel. Then there's Bedek Habayis. What's Bedek Habayis? Upkeep and repairs. 2 different accounts. So Rav Nachman says, I think that the women who take care of the curtains, I think that's those salaries really come from bedek habayis. Because think about it, again, a curtain is part of the structure, right? So the Maisa, again, that should come from bedek habayis, not from machzis hashagel. To which the Gemara says, why? Because v'ani omer mekache bedek habayis holu parochas tachas binyan asuyos. Because essentially, I will say, where do you put a wall? Where do you put a curtain, right? If you weren't putting a curtain, what would go there? What would go there? A door, a wall. So therefore, by definition, that's bedek habayis. Meisvei is the kasha. Noshema agos beparochas ubeis garmu amais alechem aponim ubeis avatinas amais akitoras. So Rabbi say the women who weave the curtains, and suddenly again garmu, the garmu family. Rabbi say the garmu family knew the secret to making proper lechem aponim. Right? Remember again, this was Maseches Tainis. We saw this, right? Remember again, they knew how to. The lechem aponim was a U shape, and they knew how to bake it and to remove it without it collapsing. The Avatinas family knew the secret of kitoras. Specifically, they knew the identity of the secret ingredient, which was called ma'ale ashan, which caused this, right, the smoke to rise in a straight pillar. So they were paid for their services. They took their salary from Trumas Halishka. So this is Kasher Rav Nachman, because Rav Nachman said that the women who weave the curtains should get paid from bedek habayis. Here it's quite clear they're getting from Machzah Shagel. We'll say first wide line, Hasam Bidabavi. So we'll say it depends ultimately, again, what type of curtain that we're talking about. There are different types of curtains. There were curtains that served as doors, and then curtains that were more decorative in nature. Curtains that serve as doors definitely are paid from bedek habayis, because those are, we'll call it structural, versus we'll call it more decorative curtains were paid from Trumas Halishka. There were 13 curtains in the base of Mikdash. So the B'Mikdash Sheni, I'm sorry. Shiva Keneged Shiva Sharim, 7 by the 7 gates. Echel Lepischo Shal Heichal, 1 by the entrance of the Heichal. The Echel Lepischo Shal Ulam, 1 at the entrance of the Ulam. Beis B'Dvir, 2 by the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Beis Kenegdan Balia, and 2 in the upper stories as well. And I will say again, not all curtains are created the same. Some curtains literally served as entranceways. So those, the Gemara posits, the making and creation of those were paid from bedek habayis because they're quote-unquote called structural, versus others, specifically let's say by the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which may have been more decorative, ultimately again come out of the machzis hashekel. Incredible. So turn out, Barabas, get ready for this. Nashim hamagadlos b'neihem lepara. So it was actually an incredible Gemara. We've actually seen this before. So we'll say, so the Gemara says as follows. We saw this in Maseches Sukkah. Women who raised their children to perform the service of para aduma. And I will say, now, what is this talking about? Take a look at Rashi. This we don't have time for it, but it requires a little bit of explanation, which is beautiful. So we'll say, let me give you this outside. There was, if you remember again, one of the most dramatic machloksim by para aduma was as follows. We hold that even a tvul yom, which means someone who became, what's a tzvul yom? A person becomes tameh, and then goes to the mikvah, but still requires what? Herav shemesh. We paskin that a tvul yom is permitted to do para aduma. The tzedukim, those who did not believe in Torah Shabbat Peh, fundamentally rejected this. One of the ways in which we publicly repudiated the tzedukim was, this is crazy, the Kohen who was doing the para aduma, we made him tameh, took him to the mikvah, and we only allowed a Kohen who was a Tvul Yom to go ahead and do paraduma, which if you think about it is like wild. But we did this in order to publicly repudiate the position of the Tzdukim. What was the concern? Rashi points out the concern is people will then come to be mekel in what? In all other aspects of paraduma. So what we did is, in order to offset, in order to go ahead and prevent people from mekel paraduma, we were ridiculously machmir in every other area of para aduma. One of the overwhelming chumras, Rabbi say, is that the children, right? We use children to draw the water, children who never came in contact with any type of tumah. Now, how would you go ahead and find the child who never came in contact with any type of tumah? So Rashi points out there's something amazing. These were children who were raised in literally separate cities. If you look at Rashi, Mekalos B'nei Lepara, Bechatzeros Habanuos B'Slam B'Yushalayim, they were raised, not cities, in courtyards in Yerushalayim, and these courtyards, Rabbi say, were raised on elevated platforms, so that they were built on elevated platforms, so there would be no chashash of any type of tumah, right? There's no dead bodies, and even if there is a dead body below it, there was a space in order to contain the tumah. These children were essentially raised in isolation. When I say isolation, not by themselves, with their mothers, away from contact with any type of tumah. So back to the Gemara, because we'll look at Rashi on your own. So so we'll say, who supported these kids and their mothers? So that money came from the Machzis HaShekel. Abba Shalom Marshall says, no, no, the rich women of Yerushalayim supported these women and their children. So we'll say, so these children and their mothers, right, the mothers would go to give birth in these isolated courtyards in Yerushalayim that were built separate and distinct from any type of tumah. Okay, who's supporting them? So first opinion says they were supported from the half shekel. Second opinion says no, there were actually other rich women in Yerushalayim who took upon themselves to support these women and their sons. So what about klei sharis, service utensils? Service utensils. Zabos say these are specifically utensils that are used on the outer mizbeach, right? The outer mizbeach is a stone mizbeach, right? Mizbeach avadim is a stone mizbeach that's ultimately covered in gold. So now we have to make service utensils. What fund do the service utensils come from? Right? So do they come from temple upkeep? Do we say tzorach mizbeach ninu umizbeach umikach asu? So we can say, listen. That Mizbeach, Rabbi said, remember again, was attached to the ground. In other words, it was heavy, it was big, and it was built. So do we say that, listen, since the Mizbeach itself, well, so remember again, the Mizbeach itself, upkeep for the Mizbeach came from the Bedek Habayis fund. So do we say that just like upkeep for the Mizbeach came from the Bedek Habayis fund, so to what? The utensils also came from Bedek Habayis fund. Oh, sorech karbaninu, umitrumas alishkai osanoso, or maybe not. Maybe we view the utensils are part and parcel of the offering up of the karbanos. Karbanos come, well, so remember again, all communal offerings come from what? The Machzis HaShekel. And therefore, perhaps the utensils should also come from Machzis HaShekel. So we'll say, so an interesting shaila, an accounting shaila. From which funds do we pay for the service utensils for the outer Mizbeach? Is it like, since the Mizbeach itself comes from Bedek Habayis, so too, the utensils come from Bedek Habayis temple upkeep fund, or no? The utensils are there for the karbanos. Karbanos come from Trumas Alishka, Machzis HaShekel, and therefore the service utensils also come from Machzis HaShekel. Amrle, a nasin element Trumas Alishka. Ultimately, again, the service utensils come from the Machzis HaShekel. Okay, Eisvei, the Gemara is the Kasha. Uke kalosam heviu lifnei hamelech v'yoyada kohen es sha'ara kesef v'yasu kelim lebeis Hashem kli sharis. So what is very interesting. So they collected money, and from the leftover monies that they brought before the king, and before the Rashi says kekalosam the chazek is bedek habayis ben Yehoash upazadir. So both say. This is a pasuk. This is talking about the days of Yehoash, and in the days of Yehoash, they did a capital campaign to go ahead and refurbish the Beis Hamikdash. They had leftover money, and what did they do with the leftover money? They used it ultimately again vayasu kelim. They made utensils. So we'll say, what does this sound like? That they're using bedek habayis money to make utensils for the Beis Hamikdash. This contradicts what we just said before, because ultimately, again, well, good. This seems to indicate that utensils are made from Bedek Habayis and not from Machzis HaShekel fund. So the Gemara Amrle, so he said to him, the Akaryach Ksuve lo Akaryach Navi. Obviously, whoever taught you Ksuvim didn't teach you Navi. Okay, it's true. So the Gemara says, lo yeas abeis Hashem sefos. The pasuk says, ultimately again, you shall not. The pasuk is quoting from Malachim, right? Ach lo yas abeis Hashem sefos ki laose hamalacha yitnuhu. So the pasuk says, you shall not go ahead and use the money for instruments, rather again to use it for ose malacha. Ihachi kasher kra'adadi. If that's the case, the psukim themselves are contradicting each other. Lo kashya. Kanshe gavavo siru, kanshe gavavo siru. So Rabbi said, the Gemara says like this: there's a difference between a collection that was done for Bedek Habayis and then yields leftover monies. Right? Right? What happens if the capital campaign has leftover money? Leftover money. What should we do with the leftover funds? It's such a shayla. So in that case, maybe you could go ahead and use it for klei shares. That's different than when we talk about, again, a primary collection, what it can be used for. So I ultimately, again, but even 1 second, if money was collected for bedek habayis, and now ultimately, again, there's leftover funds, what gives you the right to use that for something other than bedek habayis? Rabbi Yavo, leiv bezdin masna olehem, im hutzrecho ve'im lav yehei leklei sharis. So we'll say, so this is actually interesting. In general, we'll say there's an interesting halachic discussion when you collect money for a particular tzedakah. Let's say you collect money for a particular need, and then there's leftover monies. Does the money have to be allocated for that need, or can it be allocated towards something else? So we'll say, in general, we pass in halacha l'maisa, money collected for a particular need. If there is extra money, that money can be allocated to a different cause. So the Gemara is suggesting the same thing applies to bedek habayis. If you collect money for bedek habayis, and then it turns out, okay, you did what you needed, and now there's extra money, that extra money can be allocated towards other things. That's why in the Navi, in the case of Yoash, they collected money for bedek habayis, Baruch Hashem, they had extra money after that. So what did they decide to do? They decided to allocate it ultimately to Kli Sharis. But I will say it's possible that under normal circumstances, Kli Sharis comes somewhere, Shumas Halishka, Machzis HaShekel, because it's considered to be part of the carbonic process. But if you collect it for bedek habayis and now there's extra money, you could go ahead and use that extra money for Kli Sharis. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the Rishon says, we'll say service utensils for the karbanos comes from Machzis HaShekel Shneimar es Sha'ara Kesef, the leftover money. So the Gemara says, Ezu Kesef Sheish Lo Shirayim. Rabbi say, what's an example of money which has leftovers? Havi Omer Zet Shumas Halishka. Rabbi say, this refers to Machzis HaShekel. Why must we learn this? We learn this in Shkalim. Remember, the way it works, Rabbi say, for Shkalim is how? Is halacha, you do a half shekel collection. I will say, comes Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you no longer use the shkalim from last year. You only use the new shkalim. So the Gemara says over here, which money was used ultimately for service utensils? Sha'ara kesef, the money which has leftovers. There's only one money, right? One type of fund which is regulated by the laws of leftovers, and that's what? The Machzis HaShekel. So from here you see that Kli Sharis service utensils was made from Machzis HaShekel. So the Gemara says, Ve'em Shirayim Gufayu, maybe it literally means the actual leftover monies themselves, that's used for Kli Sharis. Kida Amarava, Ha'ola, Ola Rishona. Just like when the pasuk says Ha'ola, it refers to the first Ola. So to Achanami, HaKesef, Kesef Rishon. HaKesef, Rabbi means the primary money. So it doesn't mean you use leftover monies for Kli Sharis. What it means is the primary money collected from that year, i.e. Machzis HaShekel, is used for Trumas, is used for Klei Sharis. So therefore, Rabbi say, the way the Gemara seems to be coming out over here is that halacha l'maisa, Klei Sharis, service utensils, comes from Machzis HaShekel, not from bedek habayis. The only exception might be when, if you did a bedek habayis collection and what? There's some money left over, then Einach Nami, in that case, you use it for Kli Sharis. So basically, when I say Kasha, Hak Toras, V'chol Kavaras Hat Tzibor, Boi Mitrumas Halishka, Kitores, money for Kitores, and any communal offerings comes from Machzis HaShekel. Mizbeach Hazav, but ultimately, again, upkeep of the golden altar, Levona, frankincense, Kli Sharis, service utensils, Boin Mimosar Nesachim. This comes about from Mosar Nesachim. Now, about Mosar Nesachim, we'll see in tomorrow's daf, is a separate type of fund. Mizbeach ha'ola, halishkos v'azaros, b'mikashe bedek habayis. The Mizbeach ha'ola, which was the outer Mizbeach, the large altar, lishkos, upkeep of the chambers, upkeep of the courtyards, all come from the bedek habayis funds. Chutz l'chomas ha'azara, b'misharis lishkos. So we'll say, anything outside of the walls of the courtyard comes from the leftover funds. Zoe sheshaninu, this is what we learned. Chomas ha'ir umigdaloseh v'chol tzarch ha'ir by Mishar Lishka. So we'll say, We'll have to stop over here for today. We'll pick up again with that piece of say. But I just want to point out, we thought we left off saying that ultimately service utensils are funded by the machzis hashakel, It turns out that now, halacha lemaisa, maybe there's a bit of a stira. It sounds like now, according to this brisa, that service utensils are funded by something called mosar nesachim, the leftover nesachim. What that means, how we reconcile it, and halacha lemaisa, and Hashem will resolve tomorrow. We'll say, shkoyach.